Well, thanks everyone so much for joining us today. I hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. We have a good one for you this Tuesday. Lucky to have some really awesome guests joining us today. So we're going to be talking about all things Polygon ID. Have the biz dev representative from Polygon, Otto, with us. So thanks, Otto, for joining. Have two esteemed folks from Ernst & Young, Kartheek and Rajat, talk to you about sort of what they're seeing in the enterprise space with clients and use cases. Myself, I'm Nick Gaski. I'm one of the architects here at Kaleido, so I'll pretty much be doing the emceeing today and orient you on where this stack can sit inside of the Kaleido offering. And then we have my colleague David here, who's a full stack engineer, is going to provide a demo of the various toolkits and different server components and wallet components in the ID stack. We'll show you a pretty rudimentary example kind of on the glass, but hopefully that'll get the thoughts going on the art of the possible with this really, really awesome stack. So few pieces of housekeeping. This is recorded and we will send out the recording. So give us about 24 hours after the conclusion of this. We'll provide slides and any other sort of corresponding assets along with the recording. We do have a YouTube channel that has a curated collection of all the webinars we've done in the past. So things around zero knowledge, identity, wallets, application architecture. So just visit Kaleido Blockchain on YouTube and you can peruse that library. And then lastly, don't be shy if there are questions, high level, low level, we'll do our best on those. Feel free to raise your hand or throw them in the chat and we'll do our best to make time for that during the webinar and after the webinar. So with that, I believe I'm supposed to turn it over to Otto, and I will just let Otto, Rajat, Kartheek, and David and folks do their own proper introductions. So I think it's on you, Otto. Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes. My name is Otto Mora. I'm based in Costa Rica. I'm the Americas business development contact for Polygon ID and excited to be here. So if okay, I'll just move forward with my presentation. Yep. All right. Great. So I'll just do a presentation on Polygon ID and what it offers. So the first thing to understand is sort of this, key concept, which is self-sovereign identity, right? So self-sovereign identity is this approach that is looking to give individuals kind of control over the information they can share with various kind of organizations, and kind of just reveal the necessary attributes so that you can move forward with the interaction. SSI has these three elements to it. One of them is the identity holder, obviously, right? The person that has the control of their data. An issuer, which could be, let's say, an employer, or could be an educational institution, could be anybody that has the ability to issue attestations or credentials about somebody. And then a verifier, which is the institution that is going to consume credentials or going to verify those credentials, and it's going to use them for some other purpose, right? So it could be, again, another employer that's checking some educational background, or maybe checking some, prior like certification or other skill that you're presenting to them. The vision behind SSI is that you will build this ecosystem, and then users will be in control of their data, right? The issuer will create credentials. Credentials live inside the user's wallet, and then the user kind of can choose to present those credentials to verifiers as they see fit. And then another element here that you can see is this dash trust line from the verifier to the issuer, which means that verifiers also have to navigate which issuers they trust, right? So, a credential from a government may be more trustworthy than a credential from like some, community organization, right? So that level of trust is also something that is evolving over time in the SSI space. And you'll see things such as trust registries and other things that kind of enable verifiers to more easily choose which issuers they would like to trust. So with that, we can get into Polygon ID, right? So what differentiates Polygon ID, versus other sovereign identity solutions, right? The main thing is this ability to do zero knowledge proofs about the credentials that you have, right? So in that triangle that we had earlier, you could see that we had the verifier kind of interacting with the identity holder. And then what is happening there is that the issuer will have given the user some credentials previously, and then the verifier is going to query those credentials, right? And it's going to ask information about those credentials, and through this interaction, then the user will be able to generate zero knowledge proofs based on those credentials. So, for instance, a verifiable credential could state what is your age, right? Your date of birth, right? Or it could state, what country you're a resident of, or what club memberships you have, those kinds of things, right? Then upon interacting with the verifier will say, okay, demonstrate to me that you're a member of this club, or your age range is between this and this, right? And then upon receiving that query, the user will be able to leverage the credentials that they have in their device and generate a zero knowledge proof based on that information that is there, right? So the credentials normally live in the user's device, either in their mobile phone or in the browser extension, right? That's sort of an identity wallet. They generate this zero knowledge proof, and then the verifier is able to check that information, right? And the differentiating factor is that you're now able to reveal information about your credentials without revealing the full credential, right? That's the main differentiating factor. So you reveal information about the credential, and you don't give out all of the other details about the credential itself, right? So it's sort of deriving these proofs from the credentials that you have in your identity wallet. That's the main differentiating factor. Other interesting features about Polygon ID is, kind of the CK query language, as I was saying. So there's a variety of queries that verifiers can use to query the credentials that users have in their wallet. Is a value above or below a certain value? Is it in a range, right? Or is it, part of something or not part of that group? So that's one of the key things. Having said that, however, we do enable the ability to do like full disclosure of data, right? What we call selective disclosure. So, we do encourage the usage of zero knowledge proofs, and we think that's a very innovative way of presenting your identity. But we also, recognize that there are certain use cases and certain industries in which, there's a need to know the information, right? The verbatim data. So instances such as financial services, healthcare, those kinds of industries, right? You will be needing to know the full credential. Another feature is that it's fully open source, fully decentralized. The project itself is built to be EVM compatible. So, obviously we would prefer that you use Polygon to deploy the credentials that you issue, but you are not required to do so. You can, just port this to another EVM chain and just deploy the smart contracts there yourself as well. Another feature is obviously the interoperability as well. So we are fully compatible with the W3C verifiable credential spec, but we are looking to be interoperable with other DID methods. Another interesting feature I think that's very innovative is this ability to do on-chain verification, right? So the proofs that you present to verifiers, they could be verified by the verifier directly off-chain, or they could be verified on-chain and then trigger smart contract actions, right? So you present that proof to, let's say, some smart contract, some DeFi protocol, and then some action gets triggered based upon that, right? There, maybe you get a token airdrop, or you get some other credential or some access to a certain protocol. So that could also be verified on-chain, right? And with that, also a smart contract can become a credential issuer. That's another important feature. So you might be able to, let's say, reveal some information about your on-chain activity, and then based on that, a smart contract can issue you a credential that you can later on leverage. So that's another interesting feature as well. Okay, so moving on to the next one. Another interesting feature that I think is relevant, and I think it's also very important, is sort of this ability to have multiple profiles or multiple identifiers, right? So in Polygon ID, we have sort of this Genesis identity. You can see it here. Kevin Wendell Crumb is sort of the main identity behind all of these other profiles, right? And so we maximize privacy not only through the usage of zero knowledge proofs, but also to this usage of identifiers, right? So the default behavior is that upon interacting with a different verifier, let's say a DeFi platform or another protocol, you always generate a random anonymous identifier, and then the user can decide whether they would like to keep a permanent identifier with those interactions. And then, you know, you also have that ability to manage your profiles, right? Just like you have in Google Chrome, where you can select several profiles. If you have several Google accounts, the same thing could be done in an identity wallet. We see that kind of same user experience kind of evolving over time, right? So for instance, Hedwig could be your gaming profile that you use with the Sandbox, Decentraland, and then Patricia, for instance, could be your DeFi profile, the profile that you use with you know, protocols such as Compound or Aave, and you're using those two profiles separately, and you know, that allows you to kind of manage your profile as you see fit. Another key feature, which I think is also relevant, is sort of differentiating between a profile and the set of keys that they manage, right? So we sort of separate an identifier from the set of keys. And we have this concept of an identifier kind of controlling a set of keys, right? And this allows for things such as key rotation, you know, adding and revoking keys, things like that, right? Which I think makes the solution much more flexible. And, you know, we're sort of able to build upon this existing concept of a user having an Ethereum key in some protocols, and then start moving into this idea of a decentralized identifier or DID that the user can control, right? Our protocol also uses message-based communication, sort of based on DIDCOM. For those of you out there that use identity, big on the identity world, we have a flavor of DIDCOM called Identicom. And then some upcoming features that we have as well as sort of this civil resistance, proof of uniqueness, ability to do one person, one vote. That is one of the upcoming features. And then, as I was mentioning, you could do on-chain verification of the proofs, and then smart contracts can also verify proofs. So what does this all look like in the end, right? So the way that we have structured our DID method is that an issuer will issue these JSON LD credentials. These are JSON LD blobs or files that live in your identity wallet. You have those credentials in your wallet, and then upon interacting with a verifier, you will generate what is called a JWZ, or a JSON Web Zero Knowledge, which is just a form of a modified JSON Web Token that will include information about the credentials that you have there prior, right? So it will generate the right proofs, and then that information will be verified by the party that you're interacting with, right? You can see here as well that there's some information on chain. It's important to say that the information that is on chain is only the issuer state. That includes some information about the claims that they issued, that derived hash, right? Not the claim itself, no personal data stored on chain, but just more of a derived hash that includes information about that. So that's a little bit of how our DID method looks. And I also wanted to update you on some of the tools that are available today. So if you're a user, we have our Polygon ID mobile application. This is a reference identity wallet, right? We don't see ourselves controlling identity wallets. It's not something that we want to kind of do long-term, but more just provide a reference implementation. So ideally, over time, other wallets will be adopting our SDK, and then they'll be implementing the Polygon ID kind of SDK into their own wallets, right? So we have a mobile SDK in Flutter and also a JavaScript SDK for browser-based extensions. We also have the issuer node. If you're issuing credentials, that's a server that you run in your side to be able to issue credentials. And Kaleido is one of our partners that is offering this service. And then we also have this verifier library as well that allows you to verify proofs. Just showing you here some of the launch partners that we have as well that we announced, you know, at the EthDenver event, and that we're very excited to be partnering with Kaleido, obviously, as one of our launch partners. So that's all. I'll just leave you with the tutorials here, where you can find out more about the code that we released, and you can dig into the docs. And I'll leave you with my contact info as well. And I'll hand it back to Nick. Thank you.
Thanks, Otto. That was awesome. I even learned a couple things. So hopefully that was a nice level set orientation of the current landscape of Polygon ID and the various tooling underneath it. So before we look at the tooling, let's explore kind of how enterprises, how different consortia and different verticals are leveraging this stack. So have two awesome folks from Ernst & Young, Rajat and Kartheek, here to lend their expertise and perspective on the broader market. So Rajat, Kartheek, I'll turn it over to you guys to share your perspectives on what EY is seeing in the space.
Nick, thank you very much, and thanks for having us over for the webinar. So so the broader people, I'm Rajat Kapur. I'm a managing director with EY's blockchain practice based here in Chicago. I'm responsible for kind of driving digital identities and verified credentials in the US market. We also partner with a colleague of mine in the cybersecurity practice, kind of working with them, especially on the identity side of the equation. But Kartheek, my colleague here, is the solution leader for anything that we do in the digital asset credential space. And so he'll walk you through a little bit details of what we're going to talk about, what are the current use cases we see in the market and their deployments. I'm going to quickly cover what the current state of verifiable credentials is, and again, open to your questions and answer them, but talk about what we see as the current state in the verification process and what we see as pain points in that space. And then Kartheek is going to walk through some business cases, future state vision, and then also talk about what we see as some of the key considerations that still need to be considered in this technology. Greatly welcome Polygon coming out with their ID and Kaleido coming out with the space, but we also work with other major credential providers in this space. So current state of verifiable credentials, as you see, is pretty, again, we see pain points across multiple clients that we work on, mostly summarized into the length and the multiple handoffs that happen in order to do any sort of verifications today, whether it relates to talent or whether it relates to onboarding a supplier. Leads to long lead times. The experience that the customers get out of that verification process is very suboptimal. And again, some of the pain points that you see are, and again, this has been there for a while, not just now, but I think great that the solution is coming out, especially around the ID and credentialization capabilities. The process is pretty inefficient today, very error prone. The cost is actually very difficult to figure out how much cost goes in to do these verification processes. As an example, if you do some sort of talent onboarding or hiring processes, you see that quite a few pieces that go on do not result in actually successful applications for people to get hired at an organization, because there is some portion of the credential that may not be valid that the prospective candidate is getting in, and hence the cost went in doesn't really get detected that clearly and transparently. Data security risks are pretty substantial, as a lot of this information is done offline through emails still quite a bit, as we see. Increased compliance risk. And of course, as I said, the experience is pretty suboptimal from what we see as the verification processes of today. I'm going to hand it to Kartheek to kind of go through what we see as current use cases in this space and provide more details on that. Kartheek, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Rajat. So stepping off of some of the points that both Rajat and Otto covered, we'd like to go over some of the industry use cases that we've seen in the enterprises of how DIDs and the various reference implementations of DIDs have been used. So stepping off from the current state verification process, we see some of the business cases for digital asset credential management in general. We're just calling this as a broader landscape of credential management, not just using DIDs, but also as it applies to different forms of identification or abstraction of credentials itself. Various market areas that we see how digital attestation is required, and lack of it can cause some problems are in the areas of asset verification, particularly with the whole ESG reporting and reporting on accurate amount of carbon emissions, or even in knowing in a supply chain case where the goods were originated or where the purchases were originated, and identifying where the assets were in any given point in time needs a certain amount of certification or an attestation of where or how the asset is going across, even if it's supply chain, or in the case of regulatory aspects for ESG also, there is a high need for an attestation or a credentialization. The reason for that is because there's lack of trusted verification. There's a competitive landscape in general, and not having a proper standard for how different companies would interact with each other about what is certified and and what is being certified is whether it's by a trusted party and if it can be verified by a trusted party. So all those cases cause lack of trusted verification. In addition, because of the taxonomy and the differences in terminology and so on, there's a lack of a standardized approach to how business decisions are made. Another important area that we have seen is also in service verification. A lot of times when companies are onboarded or companies are entering into long-term contracts with each other, be it in the case of supply chain, be it in case of banking, or even in terms of, say, onboarding a new service provider as a third-party vendor for enterprises for software provisions or what have you. In all those cases, some of the major issues we see is that most of the time the service verification is point in time. It is not every time a verification needs to be done, it needs to be done over and over again. And there is no basis for using a credential for future processes also. The last of the cases that we've seen, we call it as a broader bucket. It's obviously much more deeper than that, is onboarding. We have two types of onboarding we have noticed. One is around entity onboarding, or we call it as supplier onboarding, just as a terminology for any companies onboarding any new vendors. And also employee onboarding in the case of KYC, when, say, in the case of employees getting onboarded to organization, or say talent getting hired into like an agency, or any form of background checks, education checks, etc., that need to be done. So in all these cases, there is excessive human manipulation dealing with lack of being able to transmit, say, the credential or the, say, background check that you got from an issuer to again present it to someone else. It's a laborious process of reissuing each time. And that's where the digital asset credentials, or more specifically DIDs and the DID tech, comes into picture. In the future state, we see that employees and businesses can use this VC or verifiable credential technology to achieve tangible benefits. Areas are around credential issuance, as we were covering, and the DID spec in general. There is issuers, verifiers, and holders, and credential issuance coming from a trusted issuer or a trusted provider, and using the power of blockchain technology to issue those verifiable credentials to various holders, helps in efficient process management, automated checks, and also strengthen compliance. The other important aspect of this is near-time efficiency. A lot of times, any kind of credentialization, any kind of attestation services require repeat process of reissuance and recredentialization and so on and so forth. Having this credential management as a part of the business process of enterprises lends to higher efficiency gains in general across the whole company. As such, I think as the DIDs are meant to be somewhat ubiquitous and span across organizations and even chains, there is a necessity for an industry ecosystem enablement. That is, having a standardized basis for different VC technologies and different organizations to work with each other, to have a standardized way of dealing with issuers, verifiers, and holders of the credentials itself. So in the last few minutes, in the rest of the few minutes we have, I'll just go over some of the broader enterprise use cases we've seen. In our experience of using various DID technologies, one of the more leading ones we have also come across is Microsoft Entra. And as part of this, some of the main areas that it addresses is around 4 broader areas that we've captured. The first area is around KYC or AML credentials, where we've been working with some large national banks and tech companies to help ease any form of account openings or any form of signature management, etc. So typically when assets are onboarded or assets are created, or assets are even distributed as part of banking and they're managed in the bank's portfolios, a lot of times assets need to be attested. And at the same time, also you might lead business managers or account managers or finance managers to sign off on such transactions, even whether if it's your organization opening a new bank account or you're launching a new asset or whatever there is. In all these cases, we've identified that they're using a verifiable credential that can be issued by a trusted ecosystem of issuers can help onboard these various entities or consumers or even business units onto banking organizations for in terms of running any KYC processes or even AML processes. Another significant use case we've seen is in the case of employee onboarding. This we have seen in various scenarios. One is the case where employees are joining a new organization, or employees are a part of an organization and they're getting recruited for talent and getting placed into different, say, clients or use cases or like deployments. In all those cases, we've seen that talent management and managing employees, running background checks and so on is a key area where verifiable credentials could be used to issue using a trusted system, a credential for the employees, which can then be used to verify at various places. When I say verify at various places, it means it could be used for accessing companies' resources, accessing discounts, or even leveraging it for any service provisions that the company might have with, say, external software vendors and so on. The two other areas that we have been exploring and also have been having deeper conversations with generally the ecosystem players is educational credentials. This is the way where universities can be enabled to credentialize diplomas, transcripts, records, research studies, etc. We're seeing that this is an area where it's not just used, say, for using your credential or a diploma and you use it on your LinkedIn or wherever, but also you can use it as part of university. In our case studies with certain universities, we've seen that it could be a case for universities to issue research credentials or research diplomas for attaining grants, funding from Dean's office, etc. Lastly, sustainability and carbon market is where we've seen attestations and attestation services being a key part. And that's where, again, verifiable credentials can be used to eliminate double spend or erroneous reporting of emissions tokens, or how credits have been attributed to emissions tokens, and so on and so forth. Lastly, we would like to cover some of the key considerations that we've seen in this area. We try to classify it in terms of three larger segments. The first case, which I think even Otto covered earlier, and also Rajat was referring to, is the area of issuer onboarding. For DID systems to work effectively, we need a trusted ecosystem of issuers and verifiers, and also a way for enabling various issuers to facilitate issuance of credentials and also presentation of credentials and following the standards and W3 spec for that matter. Some of the areas, an avenue by which we could address this is by developing standards and sort of having an off-the-shelf approach. Very similar to what Otto covered in terms of issuer nodes, but expanding also to, in general, for an ecosystem of Web2 players to start using DIDs and also evolve their strategies around creating, updating, recovering, and revoking VCs. Entity credentials. A lot of times when credentials are issued, obviously it's held by the holder and it's owned by the holder, and that's the whole concept of self-sovereign identity. But many times it just so happens that from a user experience point of view, when credentials are issued on an atomic basis, it requires user intervention for any issuance or presentation processes. Various times we've come across cases where an entity level credential can, wherein an organization can manage VCs on behalf of their employees. One of the ways we've identified that this could be addressed is leveraging the W3 spec for DIDs to use specifically operations around controller and guardian credentials, so delegation can be managed. This is an area that is being developed in the EVM space as well, but this is a call out in general based on our studies or survey of some of the enterprise use cases. Obviously, there are other advanced methods like people use multi-party compute or multi-sign also to help alleviate any form of trust concerns that holders might have with entities, especially when it's delegated to entities. Last but not the least is non-custodial wallets. We have seen various DID tech in the space, and we're also excited about Polygon coming with their DID standard and DID tech. One of the things that we have understood, or at least identified in various forms of these DID techs, are each of them have their own wallet tech, and it's very specific to how the platform is designed and how the reference implementation of that DID spec is for that particular platform. So there is a path, bring your own wallet kind of a notion, or at least kind of a concept, is not there yet in DID space. And especially when we can use DIDs follow the nomenclature of public key, private key cryptography, and so on. I think so. We think that this could be addressed by handling different wallets, by standardizing wallet standard, particularly when it comes to adding support for bringing your own wallet scenarios. That's pretty much it. I think we want to provide a general industry overview, and we've been playing with various DID tech, particularly with Entra, and now we're starting to research and develop on Polygon ID, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, hey Kartheek, just to add to the entity credential piece here, I think that space definitely is a key credential, because if you think about organizations as legal entities that operate across the globe, having a credential that can be at an entity level will be significantly beneficial as it relates to kind of any sort of transaction a entity does with another entity, and that will significantly transform how business can be conducted in the future. So that's definitely a key consideration area, and there are this decent amount of research and work going on in that space in order to make that more of a reality. But again, thank you very much, Nick. Back to you for having us here, and glad to provide some insights.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Rajat and Kartheek. That's really, really awesome to hear your perspectives and your insights into this space. So I'm going to take a few minutes, and then we'll let David, at the start of the show, actually show this stuff working. But since this is a webinar hosted by Kaleido, I thought we should talk about Kaleido for a few minutes here. So I just have a couple slides that I'll present. So what is Kaleido? Kaleido is a Web3 infrastructure company. We're about 5.5 years old. Prior to that, myself and all of the founders were working at IBM. Most of us involved in the blockchain team there. We helped bring what you know today as Hyperledger Fabric into existence. So a lot of experience in the enterprise space, around application architecture, around tooling, around highly performant, disaster recoverable sort of computing infrastructure. The best way to think of Kaleido is not really as a blockchain as a service company, but maybe more analogous with an AWS or an Azure, a cloud provider. We aim to provide all of the tooling, all of the building blocks, all of the ingredients that you'll need to help bring to life whatever type of Web3 project, blockchain project that makes sense for your company or your group of companies. So you can see examples here of all the different protocols we support, all the different developer tools, all of the different integrations around HSMs, around identity, and then a bunch of dedicated offerings that we have, right? Specifically for financial services, specifically for NFTs, specifically for multi-party consortia-esque use cases. And then for, maybe more app chain, side chains, think gaming, or think more public RPC access. Try to go to the next slide. Really rich dashboards all throughout the console, the platform. So great for system operators, DevOps types. Like I just showed you on the previous slide, lots of different pieces, lots of different flavors that you can grab and choose whatever makes sense. Use us purely as a blockchain, use us as your full development stack, use us as an RPC provider, use us as, your special sauce for creating NFTs or custodying digital assets. All of those are available. We'll show you where, Polygon ID and all of the fun things that Otto, Rajat, and Kartheek talked about, where those would logically fit into the stack. We support, all sorts of different flavors of protocols. So all the big 3 or 4 Ethereum providers, Geth, Quorum, Besu, and now Polygon with their Edge orchestration. We also support Hyperledger Fabric and R3 Corda. We are agnostic to where these resources need to run. So there's out-of-the-box managed support across AWS and Azure, different regions across the globe. But there's also really flexible tenancy models and software as a service models where you can run certain package componentry, whether it's the bulk of the what I'll call the engine, the application architecture stack, or whether it's just a single blockchain node. You can run those on your own cloud accounts. You can run those on different clouds. You could even run them, on-prem behind a DMZ. So very flexible deployment topology and tenancy models. Objectively rated #1 via G2, which is a very reputable software as a service sort of rating system. So feel free to compare and contrast Kaleido with other offerings. And then lastly, Polygon specific. Really love the Polygon team, love the developer ecosystem, love some of the really, really fascinating bleeding edge technologies that they're implementing. So they're a great partner of ours. We love working with them, love sort of stewarding these new technologies, and have had Edge for close to a year now, support, public connectivity to, Polygon mainnet or any of the test nets. Polygon ID you're seeing today, and then coming soon to a platform near you are supernets. So last slide, maybe one more after this before I give it to David. Can think of Kaleido and sort of think of, this ecosystem or this platform is really your Web3 gateway, right? No need to bring, 10, 12, 20 different vendors to handle problems around wallets or around oracles or around, core integrations and connectors to, your hardened back office on-prem systems or cloud estates. Kaleido provides the open source engine called Hyperledger Firefly. We provide all of the tooling and all of the connectivity so that you as an enterprise, you as application developers, as end users, can really keep your perspective on, user experience, on state machines, and on the actual functional logic that you need to build, focus on the problems that you're going to solve. So that gives you a glimpse of kind of the broader Kaleido stack. Somewhere up in this area, up at the top, is where Polygon ID would logically fit in. But this is also where all of our dedicated stuff lives around digital assets, multi-party compute, non-fungible tokens, et cetera. So we'll drop some email addresses and some ways to get in touch with us in the chat, and as David concludes this his demo. But happy to speak more about any use cases, any projects as they relate specifically to Polygon ID, or more broadly as they may relate to supply chain or other initiatives that your company or users are looking at. So with that, I'll stop sharing and I will turn it over to David to actually show this stuff in action.
Yep, great. So let's level set before going through this demo. In Otto's first presentation, he kind of demoed the verifier, issuer, and the ID holder triangle here. Kaleido stands up the verifier server and the issuer server. The verifier is using Idem3 communication protocol, issuer is using Polygon ID, and then the ID holder is going to be an iPhone app that is using the Flutter SDK along with Polygon ID. And in the demo, we have these example companies. The issuer will be Pinnacle University. So think of any college or university that is a trusted issuer. In the verifier column, we have a rental company that wants to make sure that a person is of a certain age before they can drive the car off the lot. And then for the ID holder, we have a thing called eWallet, and that's implementing the actual wallet service. So in the issuer, the ID holder is going to download a claim from their university portal, and it's going to be an age group credential claim. And then the ID holder is going to go to the verifier. The verifier, in this case, is the rental company. They're going to ask, hey, we need to verify that you're of a certain age. And that's going to use zero knowledge proofs to verify that. And then there's a trust component between the rental company and the university, where the rental company has to add the DID of the university to their list of trusted issuers before anything gets verified. So yeah, here's the Kaleido Identity service on the left-hand side. And this is a list of issuers that are on the server right now. We've done some testing with this. And so here's the user interface for the university. I'm going to log in as an admin quick to show you that they have already established their issuer identity here. And we can copy this, head over to the Kaleido Identity service, look for it. We can view the claims that it has created already. It's only created one claim right now because it issued a claim to itself with these X and Y coordinates on the auth or on the EJJ elliptic curve. You can see some text stated here of more claim details. So now, as a student of the university, I'm going to log in to my student portal. And on the right-hand side, you can see the wallet app that's on my phone that I'm sharing as well. So I have a DID here. It ends in HCQ, so we can use that to see that HCQ is on the right, HCQ is on the left. And so now I need to create a claim because I want to have a claim from this trusted university that I can use elsewhere, such as the rental car company. So when I create the claim, it's going to create a claim ID, and I can now view that claim. So on my phone, I'm going to hit the connect button, scan this QR code, and it's going to present a credential offer. Ask me if I want to accept the credential from Pinnacle University, and it shows the DID of the issuing university and the credential that it's going to use. I'm going to hit accept, and then in a couple seconds, we're going to see this KYC age credential pop up. We can see the details of it. That's my birthday, and then we have the issuer DID that it came from, the expiration date. So when we go back here, that's now in my wallet. It's on the secure storage of the iPhone. It gets backed up to iCloud via keychain and whatnot. And so we're going to go to the rental car company. This rental car company is just a mock list of users that I as an admin, I first need to add that university as a trusted issuer. So I'm going to come here and copy this guy and add it to the list of trusted issuers. And so now that the rental company is primed, well, first let's back up real quick, and we can see that the this trusted issuer, whenever I created that claim for myself, you can see that it issued a claim to me. There's that HCQ DID that's also in my wallet, has my birthday, and we're using a KYC age credential type. And then all of the good stuff underneath. But yeah, context switching back over to the rental car company. As an admin, I need to verify the age of the person that's holding the claim. I'm going to hit, as David on my phone, I'm going to hit connect, and I'm going to scan that QR code. And here's a proof request saying that Top Notch Rentals wants a valid proof of your age. I can see the credential type and the credential subject saying that my birthday needs to be less than October 10th, 2002. So I hit continue, and then you can see here in the background, it's doing all the proofs with the Flutter SDK and that the authentication succeeded. And so I show that to the clerk at the rental car company, and then I can take the car off the lot. So yeah, that's the basic flow of what it would look like in a user interface with the three-party panels. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, David. Always fascinating to see this bleeding edge maths actually work in real time. So just to kind of summarize what David showed you there, something of a contrived example, but that university could have just as easily been a DMV, that could have been a central bank, that could have been an employer, right? So tons of flexibility as you start thinking about who could be the issuer. The verifier could likely be anyone, and then there's just the user experience of actually having that wallet and understanding what is the relationship of where those claims go. Do they go on chain? Do they stay completely self-sovereign? And so that shows you where Kaleido could help you in this space. There's a number of components that were being run there, specifically that issuer server. There's the verifier library, and then there's that wallet SDK. And so Kaleido helps a lot of companies sort of in the early stages of projects like this, all the way to more mature stages, put an easy button on top of a lot of this infrastructure. So the same ways that we've done with just creating blockchains or, sending REST API calls to a smart contract or, automating the full life cycle of all of your CRUD operations. We want to put an easy button on top of this, quickly evolving ident3 stack, right? So that, folks can really keep their perspective on, like I said, on the use case, on the problem they're solving, and on the value that they're exposing to the issuers, the holders, the verifiers, and ultimately have a healthy discourse around, if, when, where to monetize this. So yeah, hopefully that gave folks a lot of food for thought about the art of the possible here. We do have about 10 minutes left, so we welcome any questions if anyone wants to be brave and raise their hand, or just throw them into the chat or the Q&A. And definitely spend the latter portion of the call entertaining those. So I'll just open it up as a free-for-all now. I don't know, Otto, Rajat, or Kartheek, if you have any closing thoughts or any points that you'd like to spend a little additional time illuminating on.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a super powerful demo. I mean, congrats to David. Like, I was like just amazed at like, yeah, just all the moving pieces, how you guys were able to build, kind of bring it all together, like the issuer node, and then how you used our Flutter SDK, and all that. I mean, that was like, really, really cool. So congrats on that.
Good to hear.
Yeah, I think we're getting plenty of questions around, like the CK technology and such. I mean, this is not like such a super technical webinar, but like we will have more details around that, right? We are using Baby Jub keys specifically because they're very friendly with generating set case snarks on mobile. So we have a library called Rapid Snark. That's one of the key contributions from ident3, and one of the key decisions as to why we decided to use Baby Jub keys as well.
Otto. Rajat, Kartheek, any final closing thoughts from either of you guys? Thought that was a very interesting portion of the webinar.
No, Nick, Rajat here. I think thanks for everybody's participation over here. I honestly think the amount of changes that is going on in the digital identity and credential space is pretty substantial, and especially as you see, kind of as the world is moving towards more and more challenges as it relates to verification and credentialization, whether we play in the Web 2.0 world where we are today, or we migrate into Web 3.0 world, identities and credentials are going to be a foundational need for any work that we do, right? And you can think about use cases as kind of Kartheek touched on, or Otto and team walked through here. And again, providers, as you can see, more and more technology players coming in, more and more development happening in this space is pretty substantial. And the business needs, whether you talk about treasury, whether you talk about talent, employee management, customer relationship, suppliers, or pure simple identities as you deal with businesses in the future. For example, your credit checks, your loan verification documents. Identities are going to be a foundation to do, and verified identities will be kind of foundational to do business in the future. So very, very important area. And this will see substantial amount of growth in the future. But again, thank you very much, Nick, for having myself, Kartheek, here.
Yeah, another one of the questions that I was seeing is like around the EU digital identity framework, which I think is also a very interesting topic as well. Like that's one of the first times that we're seeing like a government organization recognize a zero knowledge proof as a valid form of identity. So we still need to see more details, of course, of how the member states will allow the implementation of this scheme, right? And more details to come. But it's very exciting to start to see, government institutions recognizing, you deriving some data from your credentials and creating a zero knowledge proof based on that as a valid form of identity. So no need to disclose the full data, right? So I think that's an evolving field, and we'll see that as well. The other question I think was there is regarding kind of our DID method, the Polygon ID DID method, and interoperability. That's something that we're working on, and we want to become interoperable with other DID methods as we sort of evolve that. And then also another thought around that is, we don't like, you could have issuers issuing credentials using our DID method and another DID method, right? And these credentials can live side by side in the same identity wallet, right? So to allow the users the flexibility of, presenting one credential in one format or another, depending on what's most convenient. So that could be another way to kind of manage that for the time being.
Yeah, definitely. I think the evolution or the topology of the wallets and the different identifiers and, the possibility of cycling those keys and selective disclosure really gets the brain racing on the art of the possible here. So thanks for all that context, Otto and the EY team. Thanks everyone for all the great questions in the chat. I posted a few ways to get in touch with the Kaleido team. If you have any additional questions on sort of our stack, how we could help implement this, I think Otto and Kartheek and Rajat they'll give us their slides and their communication sort of routes, and we'll share those with the broader attendees. So if you do want to ping any or all of us, we'll make sure you have those aliases available. Jim, anything you wanted to say?
Just realized there's also a whole bunch of questions coming from the streaming on LinkedIn. If we're not able to address them in time, please feel free to reach out. Seems like there are active customer engagements going on, so we'd love to help out with those. I'm sure Otto will be happy to help with those as well.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, apologies if we didn't get to any questions in real time here. We will absolutely follow up with all folks. Madison, hopefully you were able to capture any of those outreaches. And yes, don't be shy if there's anything that we can help you with. If you want to discuss your use case in more detail or the technology in more detail, please reach out accordingly. And I'll speak for Kaleido, but we'd be happy to arrange a correspondence there. So again, this is recorded. We'll send it out within the next 24 hours or so. And yeah, with that, I just want to thank the guests one more time and wish everyone a fantastic remainder of their Tuesday, whatever time it is. So thanks again.
Thanks,
you all.
guys. Take care.
Cheers.